You're listening to the Beyond Mommy Dearest podcast, where we talk about growing up with narcissistic moms, how it shapes your nervous system, your relationships, and your sense of self, and how to heal without shame. I'm your host, Noelani Pearl Hernandez. Today's episode is sponsored by plant-powered body care that actually works. I'm really excited about today's episode. Today, I'm joined by Kirsten Cheong, a licensed therapist and a certified narcissistic abuse clinician who specializes in anxiety, perfectionism, and daughters of narcissistic mothers. Today, we're diving into how these patterns form and what real healing looks like, including the truth about going no contact. Kirsten, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you agreed to come and chat with us. I was drawn to your social media because you were one of the therapists that were talking about no contact in a positive way, which is weird, right? That language, but it was a non-shaming. You can go non-contact if that's something that you want to do and it's healthy for you. So I would love for you to share a little bit about the work that you're doing and what led you to focus on anxiety and perfectionism and daughters of narcissists or that narcissistic abuse or emotionally immature parents.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having me on. I'd love to talk about this. So, I've been a licensed therapist since 2020, but I got into the mental health field back in 2016. So,
Mm-hmm.
10 years now. And I just graduated with my undergrad, and it was my first job. I was working at a methadone clinic. So, I was working with drug
Oh,
addicts.
wow. Okay.
And so, unlike private practice, you have no control over like what type of people will come get your services. And so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
thrust into with drug addiction was a lot of trauma. So I was working with adults, and I couldn't help but to notice that everyone had some sort of beef with whoever raised them. Mostly
Yeah.
the parents, but what are also
Yeah.
aunts, uncles, grandparents, and stuff like this. And so
Yeah.
I was sort of noticing and doing my thing. And then I went to grad school. And then for anyone who's a non-therapist listening, you have to accumulate 3,000 hours of direct
Mm-hmm.
care and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like
Mm-hmm.
this, and in certain categories. And one of the categories is 500 hours in treating children. And so I
Mm-hmm.
went transferring from the methadone clinic to a clinic where we would treat kids. And in my program, they were under 9. And a lot of them were in foster care. And so again,
Mm-hmm.
I was treating trauma. But what was different with them is when you get a case for a child who's in foster care,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before you actually meet with them, the social worker will send you what is it called? A court report,
Oh,
which
yep. Mm-hmm.
details everything from the first call to
Mm-hmm.
CPS to the removal and the judge making a decision that the child
Right.
would in foster care.
Right.
So it's an extreme detail,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
extremely detailed story of
Mm-hmm.
neglect and or abuse that happened to the kid that would justify removal. And then I would start working with them, and I would see in person what sort of behaviors and what sort of
Mm-hmm.
emotional stuff came out for them. And so again, I was looking at trauma, and I'm like, okay, there's actually some similarities between the kids I was working with and then the addicts I was working with, in that
Mm-hmm.
they all had traumatic childhoods. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is interesting. This almost always winds up developing into anxiety at some point. And
Yes.
that's what I was working with. That's what I was sort of finding myself niching in. Fast forward to being in private practice. I opened my private practice in 2021,
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
time for myself in 2023. And I'm like, I don't really know what my specialty is. Therapists are kind of um, pressured into sort of like
Yep.
identifying a niche or identifying a specialty. And I was like,
Yep. Yep.
just, I'm just an anxiety therapist. I feel like that
Yeah.
wasn't enough. I was like, oh, I guess. So I kept getting the same type of people coming in and hiring
Mm-hmm.
who were identifying as anxious, but
Mm-hmm.
very perfectionistic and
Mm-hmm.
very high functioning.
Mm-hmm.
What was interesting is when I was first assessing them and like, giving them all these measures and stuff so I can identify scores, they don't actually present with a lot of anxiety. Not
Mm-hmm.
not on the surface, not that you can observe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, talk to me. Where is the anxiety?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was
Mm-hmm.
in relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
were perfectly well composed on the outside, but just
Mm-hmm.
spiraling on the inside about
Mm-hmm.
oh no, I'm afraid I'm upsetting someone. I'm afraid I've pissed off my
Yep.
boss. I'm afraid to confront my partner. It was just a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fear. And then the more I would dig into it, there wasn't a whole lot of threat. They didn't actually have a
Yep.
terrible boss. They were in an
Mm-hmm.
otherwise pretty healthy relationship. Where is this fear coming from?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still trying to figure out like what's going on. Did going through my clients' charts and going, this is the same archetype of person I'm seeing over and over again. And when I started looking more into their history, their childhood history, I'm like, there seems to be a common denominator here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was kismet. I was on vacation one day. I had some downtime. I was checking my work emails. I got it was an advertisement for Dr. Romney Dravasala's
Yes. Mm-hmm.
certification for
Mm-hmm.
narcissistic abuse treatment training. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this is odd timing. And so
Yep.
and it was the framework exactly I was missing. And yeah, now here I am. I'm a licensed therapist and a certified narcissistic abuse treatment clinician. It's what I primarily treat.
And I think that the way you described it, and especially, and I will say, like in my generation to probably like my daughter's generation, like that, there's 18 years in between us. So, like, I'm 49, and that idea of perfectionism, of on the outside, everything looks super cool, super chill.
Yep.
But on the inside, for me, I'm like on freaking fire. Like
Mhm.
whenever there's anything that happens, and it's really interesting because my husband can see it when I'm starting to spiral in regards to something, when we're dealing with like um I and I don't know if a lot of parents look at it this way, but I feel like the interactions between me and our 4 kids, so I have my daughter and then my 3 bonus kids, are high stakes. And the reason why I feel like that is, number one, my mom didn't really give a shit about me. So she was just like, whatever, right? Where I'm like, I don't ever want my kids to feel like that
Right.
when they're dealing with me. So there's that one tick up the anxieties, you know, and they're these little people. And yes, she's 30, but she's always going to be a little person to me, that depend on you for everything. And if you make one move or one wrong recommendation, it can change the pathway of their life. And so, like, I have this like wait and thought process in regards to that. And when I'm like talking to my daughter about, and she's going to listen to this, I know. So don't give mommy a heart attack. But when I'm talking to her about things that I think that in my ideal are like a high weighted thing, I will like process them over and over again in my head, create a speech for what it might look like. And I think that when we're looking at especially women, daughters of narcissistic, and I would love to talk about sons of narcissistic moms, and they might look really calm on the outside, but are like, I'm constantly overwhelmed internally. So what are kind of those patterns that you see most often show up with your clients, or that you are trained to look for in both women and men, to kind of say, okay, you know what, this checks the box of a narcissistic mom. Let's go down this pathway and let me get a little bit more information.
Yeah. So I'm a therapist. I can't help but to catch something you said. So I gotta
Okay.
circle.
Okay. Yeah. Do it. Do it.
You said something along the lines of like, as a mom, you are concerned that like one thing can change
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
trajectory. That's probably your own anxiety speaking, right? And so,
Yes. Yes.
so
I know it's 100% my own anxiety. I know it's not that way, but it feels like that.
So to address that and then segue into answering your question, there is a big part of people who are very high functioning, very high performing, who put so much, as you said, like risk and stake on themselves of like, I have to
Hmm.
do everything perfectly, including
Hmm.
parenting, or else
Hmm.
I'm going to ruin my child, right? Like I'm
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
whatever. That's not necessarily true. So I want to
Yes,
like
they're really resilient. Just so you know, kids are really
they
resilient.
are resilient, and even in the case where there is, let's say, a narcissistic parent and then a non-narcissistic
Hmm.
parent, a child only really needs one healthy parent in order
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
be an
Hmm.
adaptive, healthy
Hmm.
person.
Hmm.
Obviously,
Hmm.
two is ideal, and having a whole community is
Right.
ideal. But we humans are not so fragile that a parent makes a
Yes.
mistake and their lives are ruined. So into segueing into answering the
I
question,
appreciate that. I appreciate
yes.
that. That made me
But
feel seen. Thank you.
it's what I do for a living, you know.
I appreciate it.
Um, But one thing that I tell that is a tell for me that sort of makes me go, okay, I think I need to start assessing for, and it's not just narcissism. We want to use the word antagonism. So antagonism
Okay.
is sort of an umbrella term that narcissism falls into.
Okay.
Emotional maturity also fits snugly under that umbrella term. And so one thing that sort of makes a ring bell for me that a client may have been raised in an antagonistic family system or a narcissistic family system is something called fawning. And it's a nerve
Mm-hmm.
response. So we hear people talk about like, oh, my fight or flight is triggered. And my
Mm-hmm.
clients
Hmm.
tell me that too. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, well, actually, you're fawning.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
fawning is it's a very valid nervous system
Mm-hmm.
response.
Mm-hmm.
You try to appear as non-threatening as possible. You
Mm-hmm.
get really porous and flexible with your boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in the name of not pissing off the aggressor
Mm-hmm.
that maybe
Yep.
they pity on you, they see you as less of a threat, they'll do less harm
Mm-hmm.
to you. So my typical client is someone who engages in a lot of fawn responses.
Mm-hmm.
They're still very high functioning, and part of the high functioning can be part of the fawning response. People can kind of get stuck in a
Mm-hmm.
nervous response, fawning being one of them, in which they're constantly reading the room. They're constantly auditing the room. I'm trying to assess
Mm-hmm.
people's emotions. I'm trying to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anticipate needs before someone is upset. I'm trying to solve
Mm-hmm.
before a problem occurs.
Mm-hmm.
So the high functioning part is I need to work and meet the demands of everyone else around me so I can keep the environment calm. And if they're
Mm-hmm.
calm, I'm safe. So
Right.
that's one of the bells that rings for me.
Well, and I think that, back in the olden days, as my kids always say, um, when I was in college and going to grad school, there was just the flight or fight. That
Yep.
was it. That's all we talked about. But there have been two more F's that have been added to that with the freeze and the fawning. And I think that, of course, science is always changing. We're gaining more information, we're getting more data. And that's a really important thing. And especially when we're talking about narcissistic behavior, because that hypervigilance that you were just talking about, the scanning the room, trying to figure things out, when little kids are like thinking in their mind, oh, if I do this for mommy, she's not going to be upset and things will be okay. Or I often did because I was a latchkey kid, I was left at home a lot alone. And so, I would do make a snack, do whatever. But as soon as I like would hear the locks jiggle, I would start running around the house and start trying to clean everything so that it was clean, as clean as, a 8, 9, or 10-year-old can do. And then, that's it.
Yeah.
And so that thought process of everything needs to be a certain way. And we see it like exacerbated in movies where like you'll see I'm trying to think of one that saw. Well, I'm reading this book with our book club. I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurk.
Right.
I can't. I can never
Jeanette
remember her.
McCurdy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Jeanette McCurdy, and she talks about where like in the first part of the book where she talks about how she did all these things, or she would remember all these things when she was doing her acting, so she could tell her mom, so
Hmm.
that her mom would be happy.
Yeah.
And then she talks about this time where her mom snapped, and it was like her dad had come home late, and she was like, "You're late," and that Jeanette was trying to be the middle person all the time
Hmm.
to get her mom to like not freak out or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that for a lot of people, they don't understand that that too is, a way to that your nervous system is just wrecked. It's not just the fight or flight or the freeze.
Hmm.
There's this other aspect of it. So I appreciate the fact that you bring that up. And it makes sense that it would be like a pattern that you see all the time, especially with high achieving people.
Oh yeah.
Totally makes sense. You know, a lot of the people that I see and the people that you say talk about walking on the eggshells, and
Mhm.
we're talking about, the fawning and whatnot. How does this environment really shape a child and then move into that anxiety into adulthood?
That's a big question.
Mhm.
I mean, narcissistic parents, I should say, um, they're kind of tricky because there's a difference between people who grew up with a narcissistic parent versus they grew up in a healthy environment and then they maybe married a
Yes.
narcissist later in life. There's
Yes.
that.
Hmm.
The one
Hmm.
who grew up healthy and then married the narcissist, that narcissistic spouse will deconstruct the foundation of someone's confidence and their identity and their well-being and sort of build up a new version that the narcissist wants them to be.
Hmm.
But in healing, you can find your foundation again,
Hmm.
return
Right.
back to a familiar space and go, I was confident, I know how to get there again. This
Hmm.
is different than someone who has grown up or was raised by a narcissistic caregiver who never allows them to build a good foundation to begin with. So the whole like walking on eggshells, what that does is it builds a constant narrative in one's mind that they always have to put their needs on the back burner.
Hmm.
This goes
Hmm.
back to funny, their needs on
Hmm.
the back burner in order to prioritize the narcissist. And then that
Hmm.
generalizes to everyone else. So that's my
Right.
boss, my teachers, that's my friends, that's my partners, that's everyone
Hmm.
else.
Hmm.
It there's a lot that can be said about it, but yes, it sort of shapes a person to never consider themselves and always struggle to prioritize themselves.
Hmm.
And there's a function to that, to never prioritize yourself so that you never gain the independence to leave your narcissistic
Yes.
parent. A
Hmm.
narcissistic parent is very fearful of something in the therapy world we call individuation or differentiation. And the idea with
Hmm.
it is as we grow up in healthy families, we should be able to adopt
Hmm.
opinions and lifestyles of our own that might be different than our
Hmm.
family system, right? So if I grew up in a staunchly Republican family and I grew up to be
Yeah.
Democratic, in a healthy
Hmm.
family, there is tolerance for that, and you should be able to
Yes.
feel like you belong to your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in a narcissistic family system, that individuation, that difference in identity is a huge threat. So I
Yes.
narcissists don't like authentic people because
Hmm.
they might splinter away from the identity that that narcissistic caregiver tried to establish for the family.
Right.
If the narcissistic caregiver is successful in not allowing their child to have autonomy, have creativity, have opinions of their own, and always keep them walking on eggshells, then the
Hmm.
narcissistic parent feels that they've hooked their kid
Hmm.
and they'll
Hmm.
never leave them and they'll continue to be an extension of their.
Right. Yeah. It's really interesting. I rarely talk about politics on this because I think that I'm a very open person. I have a very staunch idea of what I want, but I know people grow up in different ways and they have different ideals. But when you said that the Democrat growing up in a Republican, that was like totally me. I was the Democrat. My entire family is Republican. And I bring this up because I had a conversation. I remember driving to middle school with my mom, and my best friend down the street was like very Christian, their family was really Republican. They had very simple ideals. And I guess at school, like the idea of abortion came up and a woman's right to choose. And it was really interesting because we were talking about it. Me and my friend were talking about it in the back, and she's like, I just think, it's wrong. And I was like, I totally understand. And I'm talking about a woman's right to choose. I'm not talking about actually doing this. I'm saying a woman should have the right to choose. And my mom was like, what?
Mm,
Like in the front of the car, you believe that? I was like, don't tell me what to believe. And I think that was the first time there was this idea that I was going to be different than what she had originally thought.
yeah.
And that kind of started this process of me fighting back in a different way than what she had originally thought I was going to be. And at that time too, like my parents were going through divorce, they like had lost their house. So like a lot of things were changing.
Mm,
And I think for me, like I was blowing up my foundation because I knew something was wrong with the way that she was parenting. She also had come back, she said, from court, and the court said that I wasn't allowed to see my dad. But later my dad told me that she told the court that I didn't want to see my dad. And it was really like an interesting thing
Yeah.
because I was like, my dad's a goofy guy, poor guy. He's been in like two narcissistic relationships. My mom, my stepmom. I say the jury's still out on his girlfriend. I don't know if she's a narcissist. I haven't met her, but come back in 2 years and maybe I'll be talking about her on the podcast.
Okay.
But I think that for him, he like was run over by these women, and what I perceived as he didn't want me
Hmm.
was my mom controlling that entire situation. And in the like late 80s, early 90s, it was different in court than it is now. Meaning now they might talk to the kids, or they might give more weight to certain things that are happening. It was interesting that you talked about foster care, because our experience out here, well, I will say most of the time they get it right, but when they get it wrong, they get it wrong really badly. And so it is a system that could be worked on, I think. And that, again, a whole nother
I
podcast we'll sit
totally
down.
agree.
Okay, good. We'll do a whole nother podcast where we talk about the systems and how they can change, because I think there's a lot. I can't get off the soapbox without saying this. I know that it is the US American way to create systems that are cookie cutter. I get that. I think in their mind, they think this is how it's going to work. But when you're dealing with systems where there's emotions and humans, schooling, education, kids that are going through foster care, abuse, each individual case is different, and you have to look at it with that open eyes. And the cookie cutter system doesn't work. But we'll
Mhm.
have a whole nother podcast on that, because I have a lot of stuff to say in regards to
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is you talk about the scanning,
Mhm.
and then I gave a example of what overthinking is, real time and replaying those conversations. What's actually happening in a nervous system there when that's happening? Overthinking, scanning, replaying conversations when they're kind of going through that hypervigilance in their mind.
Yeah. Okay. So the way that I explain it to people is that your nervous system is kind of like a dimmer switch that you like either
Mm-hmm,
turn clockwise and counterclockwise to turn the light on and off. And when the dimmer switch ramps all the way on and the light is as bright as it can be, that's when you're
mm-hmm,
super vigilant.
mm-hmm,
When you're more relaxed, the dimmer switch kind of turns the other way. Things get dimmer, things get more calm and quiet. What's happening with the scanning is maybe the dimmer switch is turning on. It's a
mm-hmm,
slow brightening of the light, and someone is saying, oh, "Okay, I'm feeling like something is happening. I don't know
mm-hmm,
what it is. Maybe someone's mood is a little bit off.
mm-hmm,
Maybe the status quo is just a little bit different today." So let's
mm-hmm,
say
mm-hmm,
someone's at work, because a lot of these high achieving people have jobs,
mm-hmm,
right? So
mm-hmm,
they're at work. Their boss is usually pretty cheerful.
mm-hmm,
Boss comes in one day in a pissy mood.
mm-hmm,
Someone with a hypervigilant nervous system, they're going to notice that dimmer turning on.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They're going to kind of lean back and observe and get a feel. They think they're really logical people, but they're more emotional than they give themselves credit for. And
Yes.
they're using their emotions to scan their own bodies and say, how safe do I feel right now? Maybe the boss is a completely normal guy and just got cut off on maybe got like
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something, is a little
yeah,
bit crazy coming
yeah.
into. But a person who grew up in this sort of family system, they're going to notice that the mood has
Mm-hmm,
shifted. Someone's shifted mood is a trigger for
mm-hmm,
for that dimmer switch to start to turn on and go, what do I need to do to assuage my boss's mood right now?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
How do
mm-hmm,
I prevent my boss from getting more upset and doing something that could put me in a really intolerable
mm-hmm,
situation?
mm-hmm,
So maybe you're like, can I make you some coffee? Hey,
mm-hmm,
how was
mm-hmm,
your drive today? Is there anything I got everything done today? Is there anything else that you need?
mm-hmm,
Right. So it's
mm-hmm,
a lot of questioning. It's a lot of that people pleasing. I have a lot of people pleasers in my practice because that
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
pleasing is a function to stay safe or to
mm-hmm,
stay comfortable. And so even though the boss isn't mad at you, the boss isn't doing anything
Mhm,
crazy or that's actually going to harm you, what they're picking up on is a familiar pattern where their
mhm,
parent comes home pissy. And even
mhm,
though the boss isn't going to do anything that hurts you, what they're anticipating or their nervous system is anticipating is the mom who started throwing items across the room, or the dad
mhm,
really
mhm,
punished his kids because
mhm,
he was in a
mhm,
bad mood. Or
mhm.
in more severe cases, I mean, I've had people tell me, my dad came home upset one day and he killed our pet. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're
Yikes.
talking more about
Yeah.
like malignant
Yeah.
nerves. They'll
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
cross boundaries
Yeah.
like that. And so
Yeah.
someone at work and they're noticing that dimmer switch turn on and they're like, I feel unsafe because I've been here before.
Mhm,
My
mhm,
body has felt this way before and something terrible happened.
mhm,
That's what
mhm.
they're trying to do is they're trying to prevent catastrophe, which is what anxiety is all about. It's trying to prevent
Yeah.
catastrophe from happening. So
Yeah.
dimmer switch turns on people pleasing behaviors to try to stay safe.
That's really, I think for me, that's really interesting. I always have been able to tell, like, I feel like I have a special, like, radar for narcissistic people,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Because of that. And when I tell people the story of what my mom has done, like when you just said about a malignant narcissist, and them like killing a pet, like
Yeah.
of course I freak out. Some of it is because pets are so helpless, but that's also like I'm like, oh my god. Whereas if I tell any of the stories of any like one thing that my mom has done, I get the same look from people, and it doesn't even phase me. I'm like, that's just the way it was.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of the things, like in regards to that, my reaction, the perfectionism, if I mess up on something, I really kind of developed that as a survival strategy. Because if you think of like kids, like there's no way like I think of um like my bonus kids like accidentally spilling something and they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, it's not a big deal. We
Yeah.
have paper towels and we have towels. Like it's not a big deal. But someone like a child for myself, like that's a huge deal if I drop I am
Oh,
going through perimenopause, so I'll drop something, right?
rules don't apply to other people like they apply to you.
Yes, exactly. Like I always tease any guest that comes on who has had a narcissistic mom. I'm like, where do you live? Well, right at dawn. We'll come and, we'll go and beat her up because she was mean. And, but for me, and it's very odd because my mom is super teeny tiny. She's 4'11. I'm 5'1". Like, my husband's always like, she's like teeny tiny, and you're afraid of her like she's a 6'5" like woman who could totally like rip you apart. I was like, I know, it's crazy.
Well,
And
I mean,
mhm,
at one point she was a giant too. At
right.
one
Yeah.
point, you were the helpless pet who could be harmed
Yeah.
in her
Yeah.
hands, right? And
Yeah.
not to get too clinical, but there are modalities of therapy that look at parts of us, right? So
Hmm.
they're like here you are like
Hmm. Hmm.
a
Hmm.
grown woman today, but we all have the little girl
Hmm. Hmm.
part of ourselves who was very vulnerable and scared, the one who was first hurt, who was first wounded,
Hmm. Hmm.
that parent or sibling or caregiver or whoever.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so there's a part of you that, yeah, absolutely would be afraid of this 4 foot 11, you know,
She's so tiny.
weighs under 100 pounds kind of little
Yeah.
baby. But your nervous system remembers, right?
Yes.
There's a saying in trauma therapy, the axe forgets, but the tree remembers.
Yes.
The
Yes.
perpetrator
100%.
forgets the damage that they've done, and that's why it could be so difficult for narcissists to ever take accountability and apologize
Oh,
because
I know.
they're going to
Yeah.
minimize what they've done, but you
Hmm.
free the bark. It has every scar,
Yeah. 100%.
every chop.
I never thought about it like that. We are actually my son is 14, and so we have two of them living with us full time here at the house. The 17 and the 14-year-old are living with us full time, and they were doing their homework downstairs, and we were all like chit chatting. I had just done a podcast with someone, and they had like been super quiet, so we were like being loud and boisterous because they were so good about it. And I can't remember. Like I said something to my son. He's 14, and as my husband always reminds me, Hernandez's grow fast. Like they like boys. He's got mostly boy cousins, and we were trying to decipher like how much he's grown in the last 6 months
Mhm.
because he's 6 foot tall now. And so
Wow.
I know my husband's 6'3", so my 14-year-old 6 foot tall. I'm the shortest in my family. Even the little our daughters tower over us, or me. And but I always like he's my little baby man. He's got a little baby brain still, but he looks like a man. That's what and it scares me to death because he looks like a man. But we were talking about it. My husband and I got married about 4 years ago. We've been together for almost 12 years. And he was like, I was taller than you at the wedding. I said, no, you weren't. And I showed him a picture. I said, look, I'm here. I'm like bending over to put my arms around you. And he's like, oh my gosh. I said, you've grown exponentially. I mean, even in the last 6 months. And sometimes as adults, we forget that we were like these little tiny people. Like he forgets that he was a little tiny person.
Mhm.
When I first met him, he was an itty bitty tiny little person. And helping to understand that actually, it's really interesting that you say that like, I remember her as a child. I took a really long time to post any pictures of me as a child and then refer it back to me in adulthood.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like some of it is I don't remember a lot about my childhood. Thank you, brain, for saving me from that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Um, and I like I don't have any of those pictures. Like she's got everything. I don't have anything. Like I had one picture because my uncle sent it to me, and I'm like teeny tiny, and I put it up. And I remember looking at it just recently because I posted a something about, I have to remember none of the things that my mom said, but like instantly seeing myself that teeny, like there was a flood of every emotion. And I don't know, it probably was when I was a little older to remember, but it was like this flood of, oh my gosh, like that. I'm thankful that I don't have those things because I feel like I would be overwhelmed with emotion. And
Yeah.
I know that, like in your work, and especially in this certified narcissistic abuse treatment clinician,
Mhm.
there are ways that this stuff shows up, like
Yeah.
really subtle. And this is the kind of thing, like, I would love for you to maybe mention a couple of the subtle ways it shows up when someone's upbringing is so severe like this, because it might help people to know, like, if they're listening to this portion of the podcast, that they're not alone. Like, this is, um, thousands of people have gone through this, unfortunately, but knowing that you're not alone is a really helpful. So, what like subtle ways do you see it now as treating adults that are recovering or who are survivors of this abuse?
They often feel pretty isolated. They kind of compare to their friends and other people they know, and they're like, "Oh, my family wasn't like this
Hmm.
guy," right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Like, I mean, I've heard. I'll be transparent in that my parents are not narcissistic. They're very loving, more
Good.
dodge the bullet.
Right.
And we were a family who ate at the table together. We ate
I
dinner.
love it. Hmm. Hmm.
TV was on, but we were eating at the table. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember having friends, come over, stay the night, and they got really awkward and quiet when we were eating dinner at
Hmm.
the table with my parents. And afterwards, we'd, go play, and they'd be like, "My family doesn't do that. We all just like eat in our room,
Wow.
or we
Yeah.
eat whatever we're ready, or I fend for myself, or I
Yeah.
cook for my siblings or something."
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I'm saying a kid, I'm saying like under 12, like
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
middle. Um, so another thing that I see quite often is, like I said earlier, rules don't apply to you.
Hmm.
So of
Hmm.
course,
Hmm.
like other people, if they disclose, like, oh, if I have a friend who, their dad was really abusive, their mom was really like physically abusive or something like that,
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
cool. But when my parent was abusive to me, I deserved it. And
Yes.
You
Yes.
were mentioning pictures, and that makes me think of an intervention I've done, and do this with a therapist if you're listening.
Yes,
You have to do
please,
this on your own.
please.
But
Yes.
because to your point, we forget how small and vulnerable we were.
Yes.
So I'll ask
Yeah.
the client to find a picture of them around the age they feel when we're talking about their childhood. So
Hmm.
7, 8 comes up quite a bit, that age, but some people say
Interesting.
10,
Yeah.
some people say 12 or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so let's say it's around 7 or 8 years old. Find a picture of you at age 7 to 8 and put it somewhere where you'll see it every day. So it's oftentimes like the bathroom or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'll tell my clients, like, say something nice, say something that you needed to hear
Hmm. Hmm.
at
Hmm.
that age. And it often has something to do with like you're worthy and you're safe and all this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when it comes to the people who had been like physically abused or God forbid
Hmm.
sexually abused, which happens quite a bit, I
Right.
have them
Right.
take the picture in session and look at the picture and I say, imagine doing the harm that happened to you
Hmm.
to a
Hmm.
child that's not you, but is this tiny. Look at
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
skinny they are.
Hmm.
They only
Hmm.
weigh like 70 pounds in this picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at how small and defenseless they are. Can
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
imagine doing harm to a body this small and this?
Hmm. Hmm.
And they're like,
Hmm.
oh, well,
Hmm.
what happened to you? Do
Yeah.
other kids deserve it?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
right? But there can be a lot of cognitive dissonance in that even with
Yes.
exercise, they still feel, but I deserved it. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier, that when you grow up with narcissistic caregivers, they destroy the foundation. They never let you
Yes.
the building blocks
Hmm.
about knowing that you deserve to be
Hmm.
treated fairly and that you deserve to feel safe. Whereas someone who married the narcissist already knew that and can relate
Right.
to it. And so
Yeah.
when it comes to treating this, there's a lot of like we spend a lot of time building the foundations, a new foundation for the first
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
and it takes a long time to form a belief
Yeah.
to the
Hmm.
point where a client will start to believe that
Hmm.
they deserve safety. They believe to
Hmm.
be treated kindly. And so we have to do this exercise over and over and over and over and over again, where you're
Yeah.
looking at that little kid who's 7 or 8 years old and saying, you deserve to feel safe. You deserve to
Yeah.
their hands
Absolutely.
themselves.
Well,
Yeah.
and that I think is a really interesting thing because, even as, a pushing 50-year-old woman, I think that for me, and I say this in hopes that it helps other women and men who have had narcissistic parents. Even for me, it wasn't probably until like the last 5 or 6 years when I would look in the mirror that I wouldn't say the thousand things that were said to me by my mom.
Yep.
Now I see this beautiful older woman who's like growing into who I am. And that I remember the first day I was like, oh, look at me. I look good today. Like, what's going on
Okay.
with my hair? And then I was like, oh, and then I was like looking for the other stuff.
Hmm.
And it wasn't as poignant. Now it's still there. Like I still struggle with it. And there's this show that I watch, and I've mentioned it before. And thank you, Ramon Rodriguez, for liking my message. Will Trent, he plays Ramon Rodriguez plays Will Trent. There is a detective that's looking for her mother. Now, I don't think they ever said in the show that her mother was a narcissist. Her mother was tough on her. And so as her mother was kidnapped, as she's looking for her, she's got all of these voices in her head that are her mom. You're never going to find me. No, don't do that. All those things.
Yeah.
And my husband said to me, is that what it sounds like in your head?
Mm.
And I said, yeah, but like 1,000 times worse. And he's like, oh my God. He thought it doesn't sound like that for me. Like he had a very healthy upbringing. And he's like, it doesn't like for me, it's like rainbows and like everything that, I'm so amazing and all that stuff. I was like, yeah, it doesn't sound like that for me. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, this is because it was the first time, like, he has always been very, very supportive of all the healing stuff, which I think definitely I know that has saved me in this later part of my life. My daughter saved me in my earlier part, and he in this later part of my life. And I think that it was the first time he had visualized it, that
Hmm.
he actually saw what it looks like. Because we don't ever talk about it. Like, it's not. I don't think that other people talk about it with people on the outside because it's just so different than everyone else. Like you said, like what a healthy family is when you step in like to a healthy family. That it was the same thing for me when I stepped into my best friend's house down the street and it was healthy.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is weird. Like, this is not what it looks like in my house, like at all.
Yeah.
And having that conversation with her, I think was really, really important. And for me, and for many people who struggle with this, like they question their reality. And I do that often.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that and needing that constant reassurance that has disappeared for me. But where does that kind of come from? I have a guess in the way that I explain it, and then I'll let you with the the background say it is I have like these little IEDs in my brain
Okay.
that are like planted. And
Yes.
when I hit one of them, it's that's my mom. My mom planted all the IEDs. And so I hit one, it goes off, and then I start like spiraling, or I'll ignore it and I'll be like, oh, that one's whatever. But that is the way that I describe it to a lot of my clients to say, okay, you're going no contact right now. Yes, of course you're gonna panic because
Hmm.
there's this. Oh, of course that. But why do you think that this, or where does this come from? Like this questioning the reality, the constant reassurance needing, all of those things that a lot of us who have experienced this abuse, why that happens.
Okay, so you were talking about like sort of like voices in your head and like
Yeah,
with your
yeah,
voice.
yeah,
How
yeah.
about the introjected parent? So this is
Mm-hmm,
sort of like a little mini version of whoever the narcissist was who lives inside
mm-hmm,
of your brain, and their voice is louder than yours and it echoes and it really
mm-hmm,
influences your decisions
mm-hmm,
and stuff like this. And so what happens is a narcissistic parent, whether they know they're doing it or not, will plant those seeds, plant those IEDs, plant
mm-hmm,
their voice into
mm-hmm,
the mind of their child so that it's there to police their child's behavior even when the parent,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm,
So, there's a narcissist wants to protect their family image because they're protecting their own image. So
mm-hmm,
a lot of abuse stays behind closed doors, but when you're out at school and you're just being a kid, you're living your life,
mm-hmm,
you're supposed
mm-hmm,
to reflect the family in a positive light.
mm-hmm,
And so
mm-hmm.
that sort of introjected parent, that voice that lives inside your head is there to help you go, don't do that, you little idiot. Don't
Yes.
tell the teacher I spanked you and you have a bruise on your back,
Yep. Yep.
right? So that you can
Mm-hmm,
continue to protect the facade that
mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
for your family. And so
Right.
that voice kind of never leaves until
No.
you get some good therapy and some good healing done.
Yeah. 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 100%, I would say that. And once you've done the healing, like when it pops up, it's always surprising because sometimes it does pop up. But, and what I see in the therapy, the healing, or maybe the coaching is the ability to, when that little voice pops up, for you to just, bop it down, like in a video game, you bop it down. It's like a constant so that you are able to live your life. And I think that is a really important thing. Um, there's been all this hype, and I'm going to rip on Oprah and Mel Robbins for the rest of my life, right? Because they're like, oh, no contact, you're spoiled brats. And I'm like, why would you say that with the power that you have in your influence? Why would you like minimize the effects of what an adult wants to do when they're an adult? And you created this really great guide, a guide for going no contact with family for cycle breakers who decide to end the abuse. And
Yeah.
there was something that I thought was really poignant, and you can correct me on the wording, but it was something to the effect of, it's not something like, take this guide, it's not something you have to do, but for when you're ready to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really powerful because I've been no contact since 2015, the best 11 years of my life. And I will say that to women who, because I primarily work with women who are daughters of narcissistic mothers. I will say that, but I always say, but it's your choice. I'm not going to say that you have to go no contact. It's your choice. It has been the best 11 years of my life. And you can do that if you want to. So your resource is a powerful guide. And what led you to really like kind of create this guide for people to use who are going no contact?
I did make that guide after the Oprah
Thank
episode.
you. They suck. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm so glad you said that because yeah, that's a whole nother podcast we'll do.
Yeah, so I mean, okay, there's seasons as a therapist. So
Mhm,
near the end of I think I just posted a story about this on Instagram actually. Near
mhm,
the end of the year as the holidays start approaching, I'm
mhm,
gonna say
mhm,
maybe around like
mhm,
September,
mhm,
October, people start to get some jitters and the
mhm,
dread of the holidays coming because, oh
mhm,
my God, my mom just
mhm.
reached out to me. She wants to host Thanksgiving. She wants to host Christmas.
Yep.
I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I don't know if I
Mhm,
can take, the arguments and the manipulation and the gossiping and all this stuff.
mhm,
And
mhm,
so the
mhm.
topic of no contact kind of ticks upward near the end of the year because it's right in your face that you're kind of obligated to see your family during the
Right.
holidays, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But in the, first 8 months of the year, people aren't really as concerned about it,
Yeah,
especially if
yeah.
they're distance, they don't live near their family of origin or whatever. It
Mhm,
kind of is in the
mhm,
back of their mind. And so what happens is they white knuckle themselves through Christmas and whatever
mhm.
holidays and then go, okay, I don't have to think about that for another year. It's just phone
Right,
calls and text messages and I can deal with that.
right.
But the agony that I see on people's faces, and it's not just my clients, like there's a lot of no contact
Mhm,
videos that I see like on TikTok and Instagram and
mhm,
stuff.
mhm, mhm,
People will agonize over, I want to go no contact. I fantasize. People will tell me I fantasize about my parent dying. People,
mhm, mhm,
McCurdy was sort of,
mhm,
articulating in her
mhm,
book.
mhm,
The only way I can have relief is if this person is gone.
mhm.
And so there's a lot of shame when they say something like, there's a part of me that just really wants them to like pass away or something or move to
Mhm,
another
mhm,
country
mhm,
to see them.
mhm,
And I kind of cock my head and I'm like, well, tell me more
mhm.
about they want no contact. Some people, I'm not saying this as a blanket statement, but some people
Yeah.
want no contact.
Yep.
But programming about keeping a
Mhm,
united front, about the facade that
mhm,
we're a happy family, that interject of their mom or dad's voice or their
mhm,
grandparents' voice or whatever
mhm,
going through and detonating one of the IEDs and says, don't you dare. You would be a
mhm,
bad daughter, you'd be a bad
mhm,
son, you'd be tearing
mhm,
family. Shame on you. We don't do that in our culture. Our religion doesn't support
mhm,
that, right?
mhm,
All of these reasons why you should not go no contact,
mhm, mhm,
but they still really want it. And it's the only way
mhm,
they feel like they're calm is when they have the distance from
mhm,
their folks.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
I'm not pro no contact. I'm not out here going like, cut off your family, yay,
Yeah, yeah,
estrangement.
yeah, yeah.
But we would never, if a friend came up to you, if a girlfriend came up to you and said,
Mhm, mhm,
I'm dating this man and he's beating the ever living shit out of me. I don't know if I'm allowed to
mhm.
cuss here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, totally allowed to cuss. Yes.
Okay. He's beating the shit out of me. He's
Mhm,
stealing my money. He's calling me
mhm,
fat and stupid. Anytime I try to tell him how I feel, he shoots
mhm,
it down, minimizes me. The day that girlfriend comes up to you and says, I broke up with him,
mhm.
we're relieved. And we go, good for you. Yeah, put
Yeah,
yourself first.
yeah,
But when it's your mom who's kicking your ass,
yeah,
when it's your dad who's stealing your money, when
yeah,
it's your grandmother who's telling you that you're absolutely worthless,
yeah.
we're not supposed to be relieved when that person's not in your life
Right.
anymore. Make
Yeah.
that make sense.
Yeah. Well, and that's for me, that's always the crazy part of it when people are like, oh, it's your mother. Oh, like the my favorite is, oh, the Bible says. And I'm like, yeah, but come on, like that's not the way people roll. And or we look around the world, we see women who have been in horrible relationships, or the latest, the woman, the secret life of Mormon wives, like
Mhm.
beating the crap out of her husband, like any of those things. And I think people have a really hard time thinking about women as abusers. And I'm not saying it's just women who are abusers or just men. I'm saying that people can be abusive, they can be pieces of shit, and they can treat people horribly. So if we start at that baseline, that there is the ability that people can do that, of course, a mother can be horrible. And I
Yeah.
like, I can't handle when people who have that influence, like Oprah or Mel Robbins, that say, just get over it. Because, like, I think of if I was Oprah or Mel Robbins, I would never say that because I would hate to think about all the people who I've pushed back into these relationships and the possibility of a bazillion things happening. It might send somebody over the deep end and they might unalive themselves. They might get beat the crap out of. And, like that sense of liability and responsibility is too high for me, which is why I would never say anything like that. Like, I don't know what their lawyers are saying to them, but they should probably tell them the age old important rule that shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up.
Good question, actually. Like, what are their PR teams saying?
Right. Like, shut up.
There's
Like,
a there's a video I have pinned on my Instagram because I asked, like the caption on the screen was like
yeah,
daughters
yeah.
of to say your parent is a narcissist without actually writing it.
Yeah,
And there,
yeah.
I don't know, maybe over 1,000 comments at this point.
That's so
Those
crazy.
stories that people share are horrific. And
Yes.
if I were to math it out, I would say maybe like 8 out of 10 responses had to do with their mother.
It's
Um,
crazy. Like,
mhm.
to me, that's crazy. And I think some of it, and I don't, so let me just say before I say this, I don't know if any of this is true. I don't know what the data is. It's hard to get data on narcissistic moms because they never come to therapy, which is why I was so surprised when you said someone was diagnosed being a narcissist because they don't come to therapy. They usually make the person who they are abusing go to therapy. And so I don't know what it is, but I can on my two hands and over people close to me, people who I love, friends who have narcissistic moms. And some of it might be proximity, some of it might be because we have similarities, some of it might be, those things, but I know of of these people and and systems that have said, "Oh, she's just your mom. She's just that way." That to me is absurd. Like it is absurd to me. In fact, it was really interesting when you were talking right now about parents being unalived. I was thinking, I just, one of the people that I admin the group with, she has also been no contact with her mom, I think about the same amount of time. And she calls her by her first name, which I was like, that's really interesting. So she messaged us and she said, "Hey, blah, 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 passed away." And, of course, the other admins were like, "Oh, we're so sorry." And then I read the obituary that she shared with us. And she shared it with us because her mother said that her daughter, who is still alive, was deceased and she was no contact with her. I was all, oh my God. She's all, it was her last
That would be a
hurrah.
better explanation for the no contact than having to
Yes.
admit that the abuse was so horrific that the daughter had to
Yes. I was like,
split from the
oh,
family.
I was like, oh my God, your mom died and she's still like abusing you. Like, that is like classic narcissist.
Yeah.
Holy crap. You
Yeah.
know, one of the things that I find, and you probably find too, in regards to this no contact, is like that guilt is showing up because they feel like they're doing something wrong.
Yes.
And so, can you kind of expand on that and how you approach that with your clients if their guilt is like just overriding them?
The guilt is programmed. The guilt is programmed again so that the child, whether it's a kid or an adult child, doesn't do things that would otherwise embarrass the narcissistic parent or compromise the facade of the
Mhm.
family. So the guilt is there as sort of like a, the guilt can be protective on your end in terms
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
I better not do something that's going to piss them off because I don't want to endure whatever they're going to sling my way. Or
Hmm.
it could be that interject of the parents saying, don't you dare, don't
Hmm.
you."
Hmm. Hmm.
One thing I kind of want to back up and explain is
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a narcissist is what's referred to as an empty shell. They have very low
Hmm.
or no empathy, very little depth of emotion, very little depth to themselves. And so what they do is
Hmm.
they project that onto
Hmm.
other people. You are nothing. You are nothing without me. You can't do
Hmm.
anything. You are stupid. You are
Hmm.
all of the things, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so it's classic projection. And so someone is going to internalize that and go, I am nothing. And so they
Hmm.
rely on the narcissistic caregiver to sort of be their everything. I
Right.
have to make this person happy in order to feel like a person. So it's a really weird exchange where you sort of become the mirror of the narcissist. Your emptiness is actually just a reflection of their emptiness. And
Right.
so they want to keep you as close to them as
Hmm.
possible so that you can continue filling the empty spaces. That is
Hmm.
the husk of their being. So
Hmm.
they program you through the guilt and through the shame and the manipulation and fear tactics like, you're not going to be able to make it without me. I'll stop financially supporting you if you cut me.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
because they don't want to be left alone. And narcissists cannot tolerate being alone because then they're left with that void.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so you are someone who fills that void for them. You are what's called supply.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they guilt you so that you don't split away from them too far. So you wind up internalizing their emptiness. You don't have the
Hmm.
lack of empathy necessarily. Like you can still be a very empathetic, very
Hmm.
good person, but you believe that you're empty. You believe that you can't be authentic. You believe that you can't do these things. And so the guilt, like I said, is sort of a program that you have to learn how to deprogram, take it out of
Hmm.
your drive, if you will.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Hmm.
but yes, the guilt will keep you in patterns of staying connected to the
Hmm.
narcissist, so you don't
Hmm.
go. And that's half the battle as a therapist is helping someone deal with their guilt because it's
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
strong and it's so magnetic that anytime they sort of inch towards no contact or setting boundaries, which
Yeah.
narcissists don't respect boundaries, you have to learn how to set your
No.
boundaries. But anytime they
Yeah.
inch towards identifying a boundary, even identifying if they deserve to have a boundary, I can start seeing them slip and regress back into that. Like, no, 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 I
Hmm.
can't. I would be a bad daughter. I'd be a bad son. I
Yeah.
shouldn't do this. My whole family is going to be mad at me.
Well, and that I think is a really a poignant thing so that people understand that everyone goes through this at different levels, meaning as they're going through no contact, they're feeling that. Like I know for me, there are times where I'm like, oh, I haven't talked to my mom. In fact, I just talked to my bonus kids about this, about, when I made the decision to go no contact. Cause I think they just assumed that my mom was dead because they have never met her. And it's been the whole time that my husband and I have been together. They don't really ask about her. We go to my in-laws all the time. So they see that they've met my dad before, but they haven't met my mom and they've never really asked about it. So we were talking about it and, they're older now. So they understand some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff I left out. But I said something to the effect of, it was important to me that the harm that I experienced and somewhat of the harm that my older daughter experienced was something that you all didn't experience
Mhm.
because she's not your weight. That's number one. Like she's not your grandma. I mean, she is, but she's not. And so it's not something I wanted to expose you to. My older daughter has I, the last message I got from my mom was something to the effect of, I'm your mom. Why aren't you calling me? And I haven't talked to you, she said my daughter's name in a long time. So my daughter has taken that step back from talking to her.
Yeah.
Um, and when she was 7, I remember leaving her with my mom while I was away at a business trip. And my daughter just called me bawling. She said, I can't be here anymore. She was 7. She's like, I can't be here with grandma. All she does is talk about what a horrible person you are. And it was like, I think my mom took 7 years of not being around her and like try to infuse her with that. And
Hmm.
she like, and my daughter was like overloaded with, she's like, she said you did this and you did that and all this stuff. And I, mom, I know you're a good mom and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. And then I had my best friend at the time come and pick her up, and she stayed with her for the rest of the time I was gone on my trip. But it was really interesting. And now my daughter like keeps in touch with her, but I think my daughter's really, really good at boundaries, super good. And so she, I think she created the boundary of her only like them text messaging. And which I appreciate that for her because it's good for her mental health. You know, and I kind of look at that as her like kind of putting herself first,
Yeah.
and looking at that. So, what does it actually look like when your clients, either with anxiety or, and specifically these narcissistic abuse recovery clients, what does that look like to really like when they are doing things that are opposite of what they've been taught?
As in like setting a boundary or
Yeah, setting a boundary or thinking about themselves first, any of those things.
it kind of depends. I mean, not everyone is the same. Like in reference to deciding to go no contact, I articulated that there are people who really agonize over the decision, and then there are
Hmm.
people who are in a different school of thought and say, I've hit a final straw. I'm
Hmm.
not doing this anymore. And they're actually quite confident in their decision to go no contact.
Hmm.
They're like done, right? Um, so it's sort of the same thing with like, setting boundaries and stuff. Some people are really motivated. Some people have hit that limit where
Hmm.
they wipe their proverbial hands and they
Yep.
go, I can't
Peace out.
do
Yeah.
this
Hmm.
anymore. Yeah, I'm at peace with this. I'm willing to face whatever
Hmm.
consequences there are, whether that be the gossiping, the smear campaign,
Hmm. Hmm.
writing an obituary for me, even though I'm still
Oh
alive.
God. I know. Yeah.
Whatever it is, they're kind of like, I'm willing to face whatever the consequences might be on the other end
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
going into
Hmm.
contract. I mean, I've also had a lot of people like do things that are very against the narcissistic family's values, like moving out of state, work
Hmm. Hmm.
in a field that's not what the family wanted them
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
work in. And what my clients and people who are doing this are practicing is authenticity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there can be a lot of anxiety when they sort of catch themselves being authentic.
Hmm.
Like, for example, at work, work seems to be sort of like a haven for the people who grew up in narcissistic families who wind up to be very high functioning because they're able
Hmm.
to maybe be creative and curious, and
Hmm. Hmm.
people are interested in like picking their brain for ideas and stuff like this. So that can be a really good place for people to practice being authentic when they weren't able to be, when they weren't safe to be at home.
Hmm.
A lot
Hmm.
of anxiety can creep up when that happens too.
Hmm.
There's definitely a fear of being perceived and being
Hmm.
seen.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if they're like, oh man, I'm being too opinionated, or someone didn't
Hmm.
like my opinions, and they're sort of we're locking horns on that, they can feel this battle between like a part of me wants to feel authentic and be myself, but I'm also
Hmm.
really uncomfortable with someone not approving of
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
That's one of those landmines that you were talking about in your
Yeah.
brain,
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
detonates and goes, okay, I value being authentic. I like my work because I can be myself, but I still can't seem to tolerate someone not liking me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's a trigger that sends them straight back to their childhood growing up
Hmm.
where they felt like they couldn't be liked if they were their
Hmm.
authentic selves.
Right.
So there's a lot of sort of distress tolerance in the work that I do with people, and like, let's continue practice being authentic, right?
Right.
Let's build a muscle for
Right.
and I guess to give some credit to Mel Robbins, let them
Okay,
give
that's fair. You could do that. Yeah.
give but the way I phrase it is give
Yeah.
yourself permission
Yeah.
to not be liked.
Yes. It's really interesting because I hear the authentic, like I hear that. And my daughter talks about like not being performative. So
Yeah.
she is listening to her therapist. Like I appreciate that because I hear that coming out in when we're talking about things, when we're talking about her work, we're talking about school or whatever. She is, she talks about that. She talks about, or the performative work. I don't want to do performative. I want to be authentic. And I love my daughter to death. She's single. I love my daughter to death. And she's fantastic and she's like goofy. And, we talk about, you know, looking at ourselves that the reason why we are still scared of our mothers is because we see ourselves as, our the tiny child. And I see all of my kids at this one point in their lives where there's certain things that they did or said. And I envision my daughter always as a 7-year-old, which is why I always say that they're little, like she's 30. When I talk about my kids, I'm all, oh, yeah, my daughter, she's little. Someone's like, how old is she? I'm like, she's 30. They're all, what? She's not little, she's an adult. But I see her, and I have this really cute picture. She's in this big puffy black jacket, and we were at a party and and I was like one of the only ones who had kids. So she would always have her little black backpack with her filled with all her little books and stuff and little toys, and she would bring them up to people. So she had her little backpack on. And then she saw this tiny little like ladybug and a little caterpillar on the ground. And I have a picture of her bending over and her little pigtails hanging down from her jacket. And that's the way that I always see her. Like I just see her as this cute little curious 7-year-old. And I knew that when I saw her as this little tiny person that was like needed me, that I was not my mom. I was not the narcissist. That she wasn't like a tool to get what she needed or I needed. She was this little tiny human being. She was so teeny tiny. That she needed that help. I still see her like that, even though she's 30. She doesn't need my help. She is like a flourishing, wonderful young, or how about an adult? She's a flourishing, wonderful adult, and she does a lot of great things. She is wicked funny and all those things. And that's not something like, even if you ask my mom today, she wouldn't, even with all the accomplishments I have, which thank you for my mom being a narcissist because I've been able to do all that overachieving stuff and accomplish things
Yeah.
that I never thought I would be able to do. But I did as a result of like trying to, I don't know, prove something, make her happy, whatever, that I've been able to do. She'll never see that.
Right.
Right. And that's something that I think for a lot of women, like it's important that they understand that no matter what you do, you could be the freaking president of the United States. Your mom is still a narcissist, and she will tell you all the things that you're going to do wrong or all the things you've done wrong to get you to that point. So, that is something that's really important for me, for women to know. What would you want to say to women who feel like, who are in this kind of old pattern in regards to their mom? They haven't got the help. I say, go get therapy, talk to a narcissist coach. But besides that, besides that, what would you want them to know or say to them?
Well, I could answer that, but the sort of challenge with people who grew up with a narcissistic parent is they're constantly Googling and searching Reddit and social media for someone to give them an
Yeah.
answer,
Yeah.
right? So I could answer that, and a listener is going to be like, yeah, okay, that sounds good, but then it's just going to
Yeah.
it'll get sucked into
Yeah.
the abuse in your brain.
Go to therapy. That's what we say. Go to
Go to
therapy.
therapy is one piece of advice, but what I like to ask people who are still struggling with the wanting to be accepted, that maybe that little girl in them who still wants the love,
Yeah. Yeah.
my question is, who would you have to be to gain their approval?
That's the line. I always say there's a line in the podcast. That's the line. That's really important because, as we just said, there's nothing. Like there's nothing that can gain their approval. And I want to take this point to number one, we're going to share Kirsten's, all of her contact information so that if you want to do any work with her that you can, you all know how to get a hold of me. I think that one of the things that's really important, and I lost it for a second. I'll get there. Perimenopause. I lost the thought for a second. I think that for a lot of women, this is a hard thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say. I want to just riff really quick that anything that AI, that Grok, that Claude, that Chat GPT tells you about a narcissistic mom, any of those things. Just so you know, all of those things, AI is trained to, it's a narcissist. It's trained to tell you what you want to hear. It is never there to help diagnose you, to do any of those things. Please do not use it as your only source or form of getting therapy because it's crap. It's a horrible therapist. And we all know what horrible therapists do. Like, there are people who are horrible therapists and cause more harm. All of these AIs will do the same thing because they
Yeah.
are programmed to do that. They're
Yeah.
programmed to do that.
And
Like,
can I add on to that too?
yes,
AI
please.
doesn't care about you. And
Yes,
part of the healing process with a therapist is that a therapist worth their salt cares about you.
yes.
You need that to
Hmm.
heal when you
Hmm.
have been abused by a narcissist. You need to
Yeah.
know what it feels like to be cared for. You need to know what it's like for someone to be able to stop you and go, It sounds like you're choking back tears right now. Tell me,
I
yeah,
mean, and I that I think is really important. And on the flip side, on the other side of this, because as a therapist who you might have some clients who have graduated, as a coach to executives and to women who are dealing with narcissistic abuse recovery. On the other side of you moving on, you still have a cheerleader on this side, like, because we care and we're like rooting you on, even if we're not in your life, even if we're not there constantly like we used to be, we are still rooting you on
mm,
from afar.
hmm,
Um, I had a really good therapist for my daughter, and she was the first person who I saw that interaction with, that care,
yeah.
because I think that's a really important point for people to understand. AI doesn't care about you. It is canned answers that it's gotten from all over the place
And wrong answers too. Like
and
it
wrong
has been
answers.
explicitly
Yeah.
wrong at times,
Yeah.
yes.
Yes. Incredibly wrong answers. And I think as we develop as a society, we're going to see more and more of these issues with, the AI deranged stuff that's going on and people acting on it. And there is an innate thing, like for me as a coach, I sign the same kind of like confidentiality clauses and, you know, seek mental health if you get, dysregulated, because I care about that. Like, this is not like a Mel Robbins, like, get quick fix, like get rich quick thing for me. This
Yeah.
is like, this is really important because of that care that I have. So I just want to say thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here. I cannot wait to do another one. We have like 3 or 4 other podcasts that we have to do. We got notes. We will have Kirsten back again. Your knowledge, your care is so invaluable. And I'll say it again, some therapists are just shit and they don't know how to do this. And I don't want to say this as a whole in regards to the profession, but you have to find the therapist that works best for you. And I think that's really, really important. So
And yes,
thank you
and
for being here.
I always advise people to take before hiring a therapist, take them up on a free consultation
Yes,
first.
yes.
Don't just hire
Hmm.
someone, do a
Hmm.
vibe check, get a gut check
Hmm.
over the phone or via video chat to see if
Hmm.
because that connection is really important. You need to be able to connect and feel like
100%.
a therapist. That's part of
100.
healing. And it's okay to not vibe with a therapist. So I
Yeah,
want
a
to
therapist is not going to get their feelings hurt. And like, you can tell a lot if you're doing video therapy with Kirsten, she loves video games. Look, it's right there in back of her, the video games. I think this is amazing, right? It's something that is really important because this person's going to be in your life at
yeah,
least once a month, if not like, twice a month or once a week.
once a week.
Yeah,
You
once a
you
week.
with narcissistic abuse, that's once a week.
Once a week, maybe twice a week, let's be honest. But the thing about it is, like, they are a part of your support system. And that's one thing. If you don't vibe with them, if you're like rolling your eyes when they're talking or any of those things, they're not the one for you. Move on. And that's okay. And really, I would say if you have a narcissistic mother, really look for therapists that have either taken this course. I know Dr. Romani has the extra course. There's other people that also do it, but Dr. Romani is like the specialist in narcissist abuse or in narcissism. So I would definitely take it and find people who understand this, because there are some therapists that just don't understand it, and that's fine. That's whatever their niche is important, but understanding so that you know that you're seen by the person that you're working with, because you never want to not feel that, not feel seen. And a really good therapist will definitely, a good therapist worth their worth is going to will do a consultation with you to see if you vibe. They'll totally do that. And then they will start to work with you in regards to that. So take them up on the offer. And on Kirsten, do you, I know you're in California, but where else or what other states are you able to practice in?
So just California. I'm only licensed
Just
here.
California. All right. All the narcissist abuse recovery people in California, and I know there's a lot of you, come to Kirsten. She's got it down. We'll make sure we put all the contact information in there. And she's got a little, I think you have a calendar link, right, in your social media.
I do, yeah. On Instagram, you can schedule a consultation. If you are a resident of California and you are interested in therapy with me, you can do that. I will say on my website as well. So there's a
Mhm.
contact form that people can fill out
Yep.
there as well. There are not that many of us who have this certification in narcissistic abuse treatment.
Mhm.
However,
Mhm.
if you are outside the state of California, you are welcome to still contact me because I
Mhm.
co-run a Facebook group for therapists who have the same training
Oh,
I do.
okay.
It's closed only, to therapists who do this,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
what I can do is always post in there, hey, I have someone from Texas or New Jersey or Montana or whatever who's looking for a therapist who specializes this way. So you're more than
That's
welcome to
great.
reach out to me and I will help you find a therapist.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much again. I appreciate you and all that you're doing to eradicate this mess. And we'll keep working until the end of time to fix it. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to say how much I enjoyed the conversation with Kirsten. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and your expertise. Be sure to check out her work and resources in the show notes, especially her guide to going no contact and her Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Beyond Mommy Dearest podcast. You're not broken, you adapted. Healing from a narcissistic mother is real, possible, and you never have to do it with shame. I'm your host, Noelani Pearl Hernandez, and until next time, take gentle care of yourself.
Your skin is a part of your nervous system, and taking care of it is essential to overall balance. Our products are specifically formulated to nourish your skin and bring it closer to homeostasis with every use. Start feeling better in your body today with the Happy Cannabis.
Keep choosing for yourself.